it has a semblance of justice, but it is completely arbitrary, and it is completely, and in the past has been used by the authorities to deny certain people certain rights. But there is another thing, another important aspect to this election that is also worth noting. And that is the absence of the military as an influence, as a specter. This is the first election I can remember when nobody essentially said, what do the officers think, or what do the pashas think about this? What will they say? And you've always had this force majeure, if you want, in Turkish politics, of the military, the guardians of the Turkish Republic, who had to somehow give their approval implicitly or explicitly to whatever happens in Turkey. This is the first election in which the military has not been a factor. And this is also one of the major reasons why, in terms of the Constitution, not that the role of the military is in the Constitution, it's in the laws that have been promulgated, but the fact is that the ideological component of the Turkish Constitution has essentially enabled the military to play this inordinate role in Turkish politics. But I think the military has itself to blame. The military has been so sure of itself over the years that it was the most popular institution in the country, that it could do anything and it could get away with anything it wanted, that it abused essentially its prerogatives, it abused its role in society, and has made strategic error after strategic error, tactical error after tactical error. And today, if the military faces a situation where it does no longer have a great deal of I wouldn't say respect, people still respect the military, but has a credibility problem. It has lied too many times in the past. Now one-third of the, I think it's one-third of acting senior officers are in jail or are being accused of coup plotting. Some of them will be found innocent. I mean, I'm not saying that all of them are necessarily guilty, but the fact of the matter is there were attempts at plotting during the AKP to overthrow the regime, a democratic regime that is supposed to support, that's supposed to protect. I think the military is gone. The military is, and this is this first election that kind of this is the first election where this transition is apparent. But the events of the last 3 days tells you that this is not going to be, this transition that Turkey is about to experience is not going to be pretty. It's going to go through lots of ups and downs. There's going to be a great deal of mayhem. The Kurdish MPs may or may not enter parliament. I don't know what they will do. But there is no question that the Turkish government understands that it needs to reform the constitution. It wants to reform the constitution. Erdogan wants to reform the constitution also because he wants a presidential system, which I don't think he will get now. But the most important thing is that there is an enormous push from society, not just from politicians, but also from society that wants to amend the constitution. There's something like 15 different groups at the moment who are working on alternative constitutional proposals. And some of them are large groups of intellectuals, civic organizations, etc. So there is this enormous desire to change, and it's going to be very difficult to ignore this. So I mean, yes, the AKP, which promised and run on writing a new constitution, will have to do it, but it's going to be messy. And next year we'll probably be talking about it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barkey. Next is Dr. Somer.
I would like to thank MEI and the Turkish Civic Center for inviting me, and all of you for coming.
Microphone,
So, what was at stake in the elections, in the last elections in Turkey? Now that the military is gone, and in light of the political environment produced by the elections, the last elections, can the ruling Justice and Development Party and the Turkish political system in general produce a new and more democratic political center? If this were to happen, this would indeed complete Turkey's 60 years long democratic transition and make it a full democracy. It would also make it a true example for its region, not only for economic developments and coupled with electoral democracy, but also for inclusive liberal democracy with fully secured individual and minority rights, rule of law, and a democratic kind of secularism. As the speakers before me have also implied, the election results in fact provide both opportunities and serious constraints for this to happen. And the Kurdish politics will definitely be the trump card in this whole process. The turnout in the election was very high. It was 87%. And all the major cross-cutting ethnic, sectarian, and ideological cleavages in society will be represented in the new parliament. None of them will have sufficient power to rewrite the constitution unilaterally. Now, this creates incentives for cooperation and consensus building. Indeed, with sufficient political will and creativity, Turkey's new representatives in parliament can work together to write the country's first civilian-made constitution, which would become the charter of a new and fully democratic political center. I certainly hope for this to happen. Turkey has 4 foundational issues which have long prevented democratic consolidation. These issues are the Kurdish question, the question of secularism, freedom of expression, and the separation of powers between the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and the bureaucracy. Each of these issues has multiple dimensions and multiple stakeholders. This provides ample opportunities for political law growth. At the same time, and in Turkey, as previous speakers have also mentioned, there is significant will among the Turkish public for a new constitution and for its But goodwill and political opportunity are not sufficient to bridge the mental differences that separate these parties. It is not sufficient to realize, for example, that a completely new approach is demanded by the long-festering Kurdish conflict. I think many people, much more so than 10 years ago, many actors in Turkey have realized this, that you cannot really resolve the Kurdish issue, which needs to be resolved with the existing evolved approaches. But it is also necessary to resolve problems of trust and to find creative solutions to specific issues, specific problems, such as Kurdish education and the constitutional recognition of the Kurdish minority in the context of a state that was founded as a unitary republic.